I was scrolling through my phone during lunch when my girlfriend Emma texted me, "Having lunch with Jacob. Just call an Uber." The message didn't bother me at first. Jacob was a coworker of hers, someone she had mentioned a few times in passing. But something about how casually she wrote it, with no explanation, no emoji, no details, made me pause. Still, I pushed the unease aside and went back to my sandwich. Later that afternoon, while Emma was still out, her laptop pinged with a notification. Normally, I'd never snoop. I glanced over and saw Jacob's name in her email. My chest tightened. It wasn't just a work message, it was an entire thread labeled "Weekend Plans." My heart sank before I even clicked. When I opened it, I froze. The emails were intimate, playful, filled with inside jokes and promises. Jacob was planning to take her out of town, just the two of us. No work excuses this time. Emma had replied with hearts and a note about how she couldn't wait to finally wake up next to him again. I read it 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood, but it was clear. Lunch wasn't just lunch. I felt my stomach twist. I paced the living room, replaying every moment of the past few months. The late nights at the office, the sudden gym memberships, the way she kept her phone face down on the table. It all made sense now. My girlfriend wasn't just meeting Jacob for lunch, she was living a second life with him. When Emma finally came home, smiling and carrying leftovers, I couldn't look at her the same. I asked how lunch was. She said it was just fine, completely unfazed. I nodded, hiding the storm inside me. But the secret I had uncovered sat between us like a landmine, waiting to explode. That night, I barely slept. Emma lay beside me, scrolling on her phone, occasionally laughing softly before turning it face down. My mind was racing. Every vibration of her screen felt like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then, but I couldn't. I needed to be sure, needed to have more than a few emails before tearing my entire relationship apart. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I checked her laptop again. There was a folder hidden under her work documents, labeled innocently as Reports Q2. Inside were dozens of photos, pictures of her and Jacob together, smiling at restaurants, sitting close on a park bench, even one of them holding hands at what looked like a hotel balcony. My breath caught when I saw her wearing the necklace I had given her for our anniversary, but in a picture where she was leaning against him. I snapped a few shots with my phone, my hands trembling. By the time she walked out of the bathroom, towel in her hair, I was already sitting at the table pretending to drink coffee. She kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile. I realized something then. I had the proof, but I also had a choice. I could either confront her and watch her lie to my face, or wait, dig deeper, and make sure when the truth came out, there would be no escape for her. So I told her I was working late that day. In reality, I planned to follow her. My heart pounded at the thought, but the decision was already made. I left work early, heart racing as I parked a few streets away from Emma's office. I waited, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Around 6, I saw her step out laughing, not alone, but with Jacob right beside her. She wasn't dressed like she had been for the office that morning. She had changed into a casual dress, light and flowy, the kind she usually wore on date nights with me. They didn't head to the parking lot. Instead, they walked side by side down the street, close enough that their hands brushed. A few blocks later, I watched him put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach dropped. I followed from a distance, terrified I'd get too close, but unable to stop myself. They ended up at a quiet little bistro, one I didn't even know she knew about. Through the window, I saw them sit together. Not across from each other, but side by side, her hand resting on his thigh. They looked like a couple in love, completely oblivious to the world. Every part of me screamed to storm inside, slam the pictures down on the table, and demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more than just one dinner to confront her. I needed to see how far it went. So I sat in my car, taking photos from a distance, documenting everything. When they finally left, Jacob walked her to his car. He kissed her forehead before opening the door. She smiled that same smile she used to give me. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a fling. It was something deeper, and it terrified me. I sat frozen in my car as Jacob's taillights disappeared into traffic, Emma in the passenger seat beside him. My chest felt like it was caving in. For a few seconds, I debated just driving home and pretending I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. Not after the emails, the photos, and now this. I started the engine and followed, careful to keep several cars between us. They didn't head back toward our place. Instead, they drove across town, weaving through streets until they pulled up in front of a small boutique hotel. My hands began to shake. I watched as Jacob got out first, walked around, and opened the door for her. Emma stepped out, laughing, brushing her hair back in that flirty way she used to do with me. Then, without hesitation, she kissed him. Not a quick peck. A slow, intimate kiss that confirmed everything I had feared. I wanted to throw up. The woman I thought I knew, the one who shared my home, my bed, my future was here, acting like someone else's partner. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hands trembling so badly the image blurred. I took another, steadier this time. I had all the proof I needed now. I stayed parked across the street for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, they walked inside together, Jacob's arm around her waist. That was it. The line had been crossed in the most undeniable way. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. When I pulled into our driveway, her car was still there, sitting like a ghost of the lie she had been living. I knew what I had to do next, but part of me hesitated. Confronting her meant everything would change, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the truth to finally blow up. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma laughing with Jacob, her hand in his, that kiss, outside the hotel replaying like a cruel loop. When she came home later, slipping into bed beside me without a word, I lay stiff as a board, my back turned, pretending to be asleep. The smell of her perfume still clung to her, and I wondered if she even bothered to shower before coming back to me. The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit in silence anymore. I needed a plan. I gathered all the evidence, the screenshots from her laptop, the photos I'd taken from the car, even the time-stamped email thread. I saved everything to a folder on my phone, labeling it simply Emma. My hand shook as I looked through it all again. When she walked into the kitchen, she smiled and asked if I wanted coffee, like nothing was wrong. I studied her face, searching for cracks in her performance. She seemed so calm, so normal, like she hadn't just spent the night in another man's arms. I almost lost it right there. But something in me stopped. If I confronted her without a plan, she'd deny, twist, cry, maybe even gaslight me. No, I wanted the truth laid bare, undeniable, where she couldn't wriggle her way out. So I told her I'd be working late again. She kissed my cheek, thanked me for being so patient with her schedule, and left for work. I just stared at the door after it closed, feeling like my entire world was split in two. That was when I decided the confrontation wouldn't happen in private, not in whispers, not in the safety of excuses. I wanted her to face it where the lies couldn't hide. I just had to pick the right moment. The idea came to me almost by accident. Emma had been planning a dinner with her parents that weekend, something she insisted I attend because family time mattered. Normally, I'd brush it off as one of those tense evenings filled with polite small talk, but now it felt like the perfect setting. She wouldn't dare lie openly in front of them, not with undeniable proof in my pocket. The next 2 days crawled by. I played the part of the supportive boyfriend, nodding along to her stories about work stress and late deadlines. Every word felt like poison, but I forced myself to smile. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, oblivious to the storm brewing. When Saturday came, I drove us both to her parents' house. She looked beautiful, hair curled, dress pressed, makeup just right. For a moment, I almost convinced myself none of this was real, that I had imagined it all. But then she leaned over to text someone on her phone, smiling faintly before flipping the screen down. My chest tightened. I knew exactly who she was texting. Dinner started normally. Her mom asked about work, her dad cracked a few jokes, and Emma kept reaching for my hand under the table like we were some perfect couple. I felt like I was choking. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat. Everyone turned to me. Emma smiled, thinking I was about to share some sweet story. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the folder labeled Emma, and placed it on the table. Her smile froze instantly. "This," I said, my voice steady though my hands trembled, "is what your daughter has really been doing when she says she's working late. This isn't repeating dumbs, breppeting with miss." Her parents leaned in. Emma's face drained of color. She whispered my name under her breath, but I didn't stop. The first photo, her kissing Jacob outside the hotel, lit up the screen. Silence fell over the table like a heavy curtain. Emma's fork clattered against her plate. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth, while her father leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. Emma reached across the table, her voice shaking. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, eyes darting between me and her parents. I tapped the screen, swiping to the next photo, the one of her leaning against Jacob, wearing the necklace I'd given her. "How many times have you told me you were working late?" My voice was low, but the anger behind it made every word sharp. "How many lies have you told sitting right here at this table?" Her father spoke first. "Emma, is this true?" She shook her head frantically, tears welling up. "No, it's not like that. Jacob's just a friend. He's been helping me through..." "Through what?" I snapped, louder now. "Through dinners, hotel rooms, and weekends away? Because that's what the emails say." I flipped to the thread titled "Weekend Plans" and slid the phone closer to her parents. Her mother's face went pale as she read. Emma's tears broke into full sobs. She covered her face with her hands, but her father wasn't looking at her with pity. His expression was steel. "You brought him into our home," he said slowly, his voice heavy. "Made us believe he was part of the family, while you were sneaking around like this." Emma shot up from her chair, glaring at me through wet eyes. "You didn't have to do this here, in front of them. This is between us." "No," I said firmly, standing too. "This is between you, me, and the truth you thought you could bury. They deserve to know who you really are." The room was thick with tension. Her mother had tears in her eyes. Her father just shook his head in disappointment. Emma stood trembling, breathing hard, like a cornered animal. And for the first time since it all began, she had no words to cover her lies. Emma's breathing turned ragged as she clutched the back of her chair, eyes darting from her parents' faces to mine. Her lips trembled, but she finally dropped her hands in defeat. "Fine," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's true. I've been seeing Jacob." Her mother let out a sob, burying her face in her napkin. Her father slammed his fist lightly against the table, not out of rage, but sheer frustration. Emma flinched at the sound. "How long?" I asked coldly. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Almost a year," she admitted, her voice small. "It started at work. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't mean to fall for him." The words hit harder than the photos ever could. She hadn't just been cheating, she was in love with him. My chest ached, but I forced myself to keep standing tall. Her father's voice thundered across the table. "A year, Emma? While this man sat here, trusted you, loved you? Do you even realize what you've done?" Emma's shoulders collapsed under his words. "I didn't know how to stop," she sobbed. "Jacob makes me feel alive, and with you." She looked at me, guilt etched into every feature. "With you, it felt like I was stuck. Safe, but stuck. Safe, stuck." Those words echoed in my mind, like gunshots. After everything I had done for her, that was what I was reduced to. I pushed my chair back slowly. "Then you've made your choice." My voice was calm, almost too calm. "If he makes you feel alive, go to him. But don't you ever come back here pretending you love me." Her mother cried harder. Her father's jaw tightened as he muttered something about disgrace. Emma's face crumpled, but for once, she didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, broken, as I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the door. And in that moment, the silence behind me told me everything. Her parents were no longer on her side either. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. My heart was pounding, but there was also a strange sense of clarity. For months, maybe longer, I'd been living in a lie. Now, it was over. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. My phone buzzed Emma. I ignored it. Then another buzz. Then another. By the time I pulled out of the driveway, she had already called me 5 times. I drove aimlessly for a while, just letting the city lights blur past. Finally, I parked by a quiet overlook, the kind of place we used to visit together. I opened my phone and sure enough, her messages were flooding in. "Please come back. We need to talk." "I'm sorry." I panicked. "It didn't mean anything, I swear. Please, don't leave me like this." I almost laughed at the irony. Hours ago, she admitted she loved him. Now, with her parents' disappointment still fresh, she was desperate to reel me back in. The calls didn't stop. I finally answered one, just to hear her voice. She sounded frantic, on the verge of breaking. "Please," she begged, "don't throw everything away because of one mistake." "One mistake?" I cut in, my voice low. "It wasn't a mistake, Emma. It was a choice you made every day for a year. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door. A mistake is burning dinner. This was betrayal." She went silent on the other end, just the sound of her breathing through tears. I ended the call before she could speak again. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. The next morning, I woke up to pounding on my apartment door. For a second, I thought it was a dream. But when I dragged myself out of bed and opened it, there she was, Emma. Her eyes were swollen from crying, hair messy, like she hadn't slept. She was clutching a small duffel bag. "Please," she whispered, stepping forward before I could stop her. I need to explain. I can't lose you." I blocked the doorway. "You already did." She dropped the bag at her feet, desperation written all over her face. "I ended it with Jacob last night. I told him, it's over. I deleted his number, his emails, everything. I'll prove it to you, just don't walk away." The words twisted in my chest, but I kept my expression cold. "You only ended it because you got caught. If I hadn't found out, you'd still be sneaking off to hotels with him." Her hands trembled as she reached for me. "No, I swear I was scared. I didn't know how to choose. But you're the one I want. You're safe. You're home. I made a mistake. Safe. That word again. The same one she'd used at dinner. The one that cut deeper than all the photos combined." I pulled back from her touch. "You don't get to call me home after betraying me and mine," I said flatly. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the Emma I used to love. The one who laughed with me on road trips, who planned our future late at night. But then I remembered the images on her laptop, her lips on Jacob's, and the weight of her lies. I picked up her bag, stepped outside, and set it down beside her. "Go home, Emma. To whichever one you've really chosen." She stood frozen, tears streaming. But I closed the door before she could speak again. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was steady. For the first time, I felt the end settling in for good. I thought slamming that door would be the end. But Emma wasn't done. By the afternoon, she was outside again, this time sitting on the curb near my car, as if camping out until I gave in. I watched from the window, my stomach in knots. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a notification. She had posted a long message on social media, a carefully crafted confession. She admitted she had lost herself, had hurt someone she loved more than anything, and was begging for forgiveness. Comments poured in, with friends offering sympathy, urging her not to give up. Some even tagged me, saying things like, "Don't throw this love away." It made me furious. She was twisting the story, painting herself as the broken heroine instead of the betrayer. I hadn't even had the chance to breathe, and she was already rewriting the narrative for everyone else to see. That night, the knocking returned. Louder, this time. "Please," she begged from the other side of the door. "I'll do anything. I'll cut ties with everyone. I'll go to therapy. I'll move. Just tell me what to do." I pressed my forehead against the door, torn between rage and heartbreak. Her voice cracked as she added, "I can't lose you to my mistake. You're everything to me." But the weight of the photos, the emails, the hotel, it was too much. I spoke through the wood. "Emma, you already lost me. The person you loved is gone. You killed him when you chose Jacob." There was silence, then muffled sobs. After a long minute, I heard her footsteps fade. For the first time, the apartment was quiet. But it wasn't peace. It was the eerie silence after a storm, when you know the winds might come back even stronger. The silence didn't last long. By the next day, Emma's desperation took a darker turn. I came home from work to find a handwritten note taped to my door. The shaky letters made my stomach drop. "If you won't talk to me, then maybe there's no point in me being here anymore." For a moment, panic surged through me. Was she threatening to hurt herself? Or was it just another manipulation? A new way to drag me back in? My hands trembled as I crumpled the note. I didn't know whether to call her parents, or just ignore it. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time a text from her mom. "Please talk to Emma. She's a mess. She says you won't give her a chance. We're worried about her." I realized then, Emma wasn't just dragging me into her chaos anymore. She was pulling her family into it, using their fear to pressure me. That night, she showed up again, this time not at my door, but outside my building, crying loudly enough for neighbors to peek out their windows. She was clutching her phone, probably waiting for me to appear. My chest tightened, but I stayed inside, staring at her from behind the blinds. I thought of all the times I had trusted her, all the promises we made. And now here she was, turning her betrayal into a spectacle, trying to corner me with pity. Eventually, her father arrived and led her away. He looked exhausted, older than I had ever seen him. For a brief second, our eyes met. He gave me a nod, almost like an apology, and then he helped her into the car. When they drove off, I finally let myself breathe. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Emma wasn't letting go without one last move. A week passed. For the first time in what felt like forever, my life was quiet. No late-night knocking, no tearful voicemails, no public breakdowns outside my building. I almost convinced myself Emma had finally given up. Then came the letter. It arrived in a thick envelope, tucked into my mailbox with my name scrawled across the front. Inside wasn't just a letter. It was a stack of printed photos. Pictures of us. Road trips. Birthdays. The night we moved in together. Each one had notes scribbled on the back in her handwriting. This was the happiest day of my life. I still feel this every time I see you. Please don't erase me from your future. At the bottom of the stack was a single sheet of paper. Her handwriting, larger, shakier. I ended it with Jacob, for good. I've cut him off. I'll spend the rest of my life proving myself to you, if you let me. Please, one chance. Meet me at the bistro Saturday night, the place you saw me with him. I'll be there, alone, waiting. Reading it made my stomach twist. She wanted me to meet her, in the very place her lies had unraveled. Was it desperation, guilt, or just another attempt to control the narrative? Saturday came, and I drove by the bistro out of morbid curiosity. Sure enough, there she was, sitting at a table by the window, a single glass of wine, untouched, in front of her. She kept glancing at the door, hope flickering in her eyes each time it opened. But I didn't go inside. I sat in my car, watching from a distance, until the hope drained from her face and she finally lowered her head into her hands. That was the moment I knew no letter, no photos, no promises would ever erase what she had done. And no matter how much she tried, she no longer had any hold over me. The night I watched Emma sitting alone at that bistro window was the last time I ever saw her. I didn't need to walk in. I didn't need to hear more excuses, more pleas, more promises she'd never keep. That moment, her staring at the door, waiting for someone who would never come, was the closure I hadn't known I needed. In the weeks that followed, her texts slowed, then stopped. Her parents reached out once, thanking me for being honest, apologizing for how things had unraveled. I told them they didn't owe me anything. Emma's choices were hers alone. I focused on rebuilding myself. I moved apartments, changed my number, cut off every thread that tied me back to her. The silence that once felt suffocating began to feel like freedom. Slowly, I remembered what it was like to laugh without suspicion, to breathe without weight on my chest. One evening, months later, I stumbled across the folder on my phone labeled Emma. For a moment, I hesitated. Then, without a second thought, I deleted it. Every photo, every screenshot, every reminder of the betrayal gone. Because the truth was, I didn't need proof anymore. I didn't need to carry her lies or my pain like trophies. What I needed was the space to move forward, to live without looking over my shoulder. Emma had chosen her path, and so had I. She lost me the moment she betrayed me, and I gained something I never expected, the strength to walk away and never look back. That was the real ending, not revenge, not reconciliation, just freedom. Months turned into a year, and life finally started to feel like mine again. At first, I carried the weight of Emma's betrayal everywhere I went, like a scar I couldn't stop touching. But time, as much as I doubted it, I built new routines, made new friends, and even learned how to enjoy the quiet evenings I once dreaded. Emma never reappeared. No more calls, no more letters, no more staged theatrics. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she eventually moved to another city, trying to start fresh. Maybe she found Jacob again. Maybe she didn't. Honestly, I didn't care. She was no longer a character in my story. What mattered was that I had survived her storm and walked out stronger. I learned that love isn't about clinging to someone who makes you feel safe while they chase excitement elsewhere. It's about respect, trust, and choosing each other every single day. Emma chose someone else, and in doing so, she freed me to eventually choose better. The betrayal hurt, but it didn't destroy me. In fact, it taught me something I'd never forget. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is the one you give yourself when you finally close the door, lock it, and walk forward without looking back. And that's exactly what I did.